Hello everyone. I hope everybody's doing good today. Today I wanted to talk to you about the rewriting of history. It's more prevalent than I even imagined with estrangement. And I'm not sure why. I have some theories, but I'm not really sure why. But I know in my own situation, it has definitely happened. I'm interested to know if it's happened to any of you and what kind of experience you've had with it. Because there's one thing to have a different perception of events, and that's, I think, totally normal. And we're not going to have the same perception as our children did as they were growing up of certain events. They will have their own perception. But I do believe that facts are facts, and you can't lie about facts. And I do think that that is happening. They're literally rewriting history. So I'd like to talk to you today about that. But first, I wanted to give you an update on the blanket that I'm making for my granddaughter. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. I'm sorry for the reason, but I think you've come to the right place. We are a community that is growing for parents of estranged adult children. And many of you know, but I will recap for people that are new to this channel, that on Mother's Day in the evening, I texted my son, which I hadn't done in a pretty long time. Just how are you? And it was a while later, it was days later when I got a response, I'm good, how are you? Do you still crochet? And I thought, wow, that out of the blue, he just came out with, do you still crochet? And, I said, I haven't done it for a while. And I said, why do you ask? And long story short, he asked me to make one of his daughters a blanket that she loves anything knitted or crocheted. So I immediately jumped on it. I just had to. This little girl is around 6 and she doesn't know me. I don't even know if he's going to tell her that it's me that made it, but regardless, I am making it. And a lot of you have been asking about how it's going and what's going on with the blanket. Have you heard anything from your son? So I wanted to let you know that on Father's Day, which was like a couple weeks ago, I did text him, Happy Father's Day. And he texted me back, thank you. And then I asked him, I said, do you need the blanket for a certain day? And he said, no, she just keeps asking about it. And I know that she would enjoy it. So that just got my heart, And I told him I was working part-time, which I am now with YouTube. And the other thing that's going on with me is I am going to physical therapy a couple days a week. So that kind of ties into my schedule too. But I said I'll make it as fast as I can. So what I'm doing is, I'm not, a great crocheter or knitter, but I'm doing squares. And her colors are purple and light green. So I'm going to sew it together with light green yarn. And I'm doing these squares. Now this one is knitted. And I don't know if you can see. You probably can't see it. There's a little glitter in this purple yarn, and it's really pretty. And I think she'll like it. So these are the squares I'm doing. It's going to take me a while. I am crocheting some of them. This one's knitted, obviously. And the crocheting ones go quicker. I think it's faster to crochet, so I might crochet more of the squares than actually knit them. But I am doing it. I'm going to do it as fast as I can. I don't know what's going to happen down the road. If, he'll give me his address, I have to send it somewhere, either his address or her address, because I don't believe that him and his significant other are even together anymore. So that's the deal on the blanket. So I am continuing to do it, and we seem to be okay as long as we're talking about the blanket. I haven't asked him anything personal. He hasn't asked me anything personal. And I think we're strangely cordial. So that's the update on my blanket, or my granddaughter's blanket. So having said that, we can go into the rewriting of history that our children do. Now, I know in my case, when we were, arguing, and let me say this too, that a lot of the arguments that we had, he started them. He was, I really feel, trying to pull away from me as fast as he could, but it was a very slow process. And he would start saying things like, you never supported me, or you were a terrible mother. Towards the end, he was saying I was a terrible mother. And one of the things he had said to me on the phone was that he went hungry as a child. And I said, what? And he went hungry as a child. Now, I know you people don't know me. I mean, you see me on YouTube, and I hope I come across as a nice person, but anybody that knows me knows that, nobody goes hungry in my house. Nobody ever. Include my pets, my guests, my family. Nobody ever goes hungry in my house. And I worked full time. I was a single mom. I worked full time when my son was younger and a kid. And I worked at the same place for 13 years. And there was 2 grocery stores. One was within a mile. The other one was around the corner, like within a block. And I got paid every single week, every Thursday. And I made a beeline to that grocery store after work every Thursday. And I bought a whole bunch of food. And then as he got older, he'd have his friends over. And if they slept over, I'd make them pancakes in the morning and sausage. And, during the week, I'd have to go out and get 1 or 2 more gallons of milk because he was drinking milk like crazy. And I wanted to always have milk there for him. So the fact that he would say that I was shocked. I was so shocked. I had no words. I had no words when he said that to me on the phone. He only said it to me that one time, but I never forgot it. The other thing he said on a different occasion, on the phone again, was that we lived in a ghetto. We lived in a ghetto. Now, I'm sorry. I mean, when I hear the word ghetto, I think of Elvis Presley with that song, In the Ghetto, which I love that song, but it's such a heart-wrenching song about, little children that are born in the ghetto. And I said, what are you talking about? Now, I wasn't rich. We were not rich. I lived paycheck to paycheck, and we lived in an apartment. We lived in a small rural town. I have a hard time with that word, rural. We lived in a small farming town, actually. And we lived in a townhome. It was a 2-bedroom townhome. We had a lot of grounds in the townhome. It was really a great place for kids because they had a bike trail, they had a basketball court, there were grills and picnic tables, for people that want to cook out. We had a little patio. There was a pool, a tennis court. We had all these things. Now, I'm not saying it was, it might sound like it was very, very upscale. It wasn't that either. It was just a nice place. And the people were nice. And there were a lot of kids. He never had a shortage of friends. And everybody seemed to go out of their way on Halloween and Christmas. I mean, they would have contests who could do the best decorating, So it was a lot of fun. And I said, Joe, I don't think ghettos have pools. Oh, it was a ghetto. Well, we didn't have a big mansion, and there were some people in our small town that they were well-to-do and they had huge homes. And of course, no, we didn't have that. So I don't know if that was what he was talking about, but we certainly didn't live in a ghetto, and he wasn't raised in a ghetto. At least that's not my definition of a ghetto. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me what you think. But those were the 2 big ones that I feel that I mean, and I'll be honest, I don't know if he believes them or he just said them as a way to distance himself from me. I think part of it is justification. They want to say these things so that they can justify it in their heads for not having anything to do with us going forward. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. Again, I'm going to say it. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a healthcare provider. I don't have insights into people's psyches. And, we're supposed to know our own children, but why he said that later in life to me on the phone, I do not know. Because he never said it while we were living there. He always seemed happy living there. And the school system was very good. And, it was a nice town. In fact, to this day, I miss it. Because there were, like I said, it was a farming town, and there were vegetable and fruit stands different times of the year, and you could get the most delicious. I mean, to this day, I haven't had a tomato like the tomatoes and the corn that would come off of those fruit stands and vegetable stands. They were just, picked right that day, it tastes like. And the tomatoes were so vibrant red and flavorful, not like the kinds you get today in the grocery store, And in the fall, they would have hay rides. And, take you out on the hay ride, and you could pick out a pumpkin in the pumpkin patch. And it was like I said, it was a great town to raise children. I felt very blessed to have lived there and to have raised my son there. And to hear him talk about things that way, I don't know. To this day, it's just a big question mark. So, that's my story about rewriting history. I don't think they really mean to lie, but there's something going on. There's something going on with them that, we're trying to figure out. And, in your heart if something is true. It can be one thing if it's a perception, but how can you perceive that you went hungry as a child? I mean, I can say 1,000%, I never went hungry as a child. We were not rich. My parents weren't rich, but I always had enough to eat, and I always was thankful for that, because I do know people that went hungry as a child, and they'll tell you that they went hungry as a child. And like I said, if anybody knew me, and I told one friend of mine what he had said. This was a few years ago when he said it. And she started cracking up on the phone. She was laughing. She says, I remember we'd go out to eat, and you'd bring him, and if he didn't like what he had, you'd order him something else. And I said, yes, I did that. I would do that. If he didn't like what was given to him in the restaurant, I would buy him something else. Because he was a thin child. He was a boy that was running. He had high energy, and he was always thin, and he grew like a weed. And I wanted to make sure that he had a full belly. And if he wanted something else, and of course, years ago, you didn't have to take a loan out to eat out in a restaurant. I mean, nowadays, I can barely afford to eat out. I do it maybe, I don't know, I think sometimes I skip a month, but maybe once or twice a month, maybe, if that, I eat out. With a friend, we'll go to lunch or something, but, eating out is so expensive. But anyways, I digress. But years ago, it really wasn't, and we had some family restaurants that, you could definitely get a meal. I don't know if anybody remembers Friendly's ice cream, but I don't know if there's any around anymore, but it was big in New England because that's where they originated. And they had the kids meal, and the kids meal was like, I don't know, $3.99, $4.99, and they get a little sundae with it. They could get a hot dog, a hot dog, hamburger, or chicken fingers, or mac and cheese. I think that was the four for a kids meal. And then with that, they would get a little sundae. And it was, and a soda or chocolate milk or whatever. My son was a big chocolate milk fan. So, yeah. So, you know, we would go there and have dinner, and I'd get a burger and he'd get whatever he wanted, and it didn't break the bank. But needless to say, you know, like I said, we weren't rich, but he didn't go hungry. You know, but it's so weird that, you know, when he said it, it still hurt me. I thought, oh my God. And I really racked my brain, like, did he go hungry? Did he go hungry? You know, it's almost like I feel like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you know, like the pod people. I feel like saying to him, who are you and what have you done with my son? Because that's not the years that I remember. You know, I mean, all he'd have to say is, I'm hungry. What do we have for a snack? And this would be a couple hours after dinner, because he had a really good appetite. And we'd be in the kitchen and he'd have a snack. And in the morning, he always had breakfast before school. He loved those Eggo waffles or instant oatmeal and the brown and surf sausages. And we had orange juice, milk, fresh fruit. We had it all. I always made sure, you know, and I always bought his favorites. You know, sometimes even now when I walk into a grocery store, it's getting a lot better, but, you know, I'd see things that he loved, and I would think of them. I still do that sometimes. But anyway, so that's that's my story for this week. I don't know why they do it. I really don't. But I wanted to give you all an update on the blanket. And please let me know in the comments if your child did that, if they come back with certain things about their childhood that you know for a fact were not true. You know, let me know in the comments. And please subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this on estrangement. It'll keep our channel afloat. We are growing. We're still growing. So I'm happy about that. And please give it a like, thumbs up, subscribe, and share if you know anybody else that is going through estrangement. And have a happy and safe 4th of July. I've got my little red, white, and blue shirt on. It's little flip-flops. So that's all I have for you today. Take care. I love you. I send you love. I send you peace. And enjoy the weekend and do something nice for yourself tomorrow, which is the 4th of July, because you deserve it. Alrighty. Happy birthday, America. Bye-bye.